And good morning. Yes, we're live 25 minutes after 8 o'clock. It is April 11th, 2022. The glorious 2022. It seems like the last 3 years have been not the, nah, yeah, 3 years. We're going on 3 years of shit show. But we keep on plugging away anyway, don't we? Welcome to my podcast, Cadence Podcast, aka Book Club, aka Nonsensical Wisdom, aka a place for me to be accountable to myself, to my goals. I read books every week. I read a book every week, or I engage in something educational uh, that I'm interested in, and then I talk about it on a podcast. And sometimes I write about it in a blog. I don't do that so much very often or lately. And then I make TikToks and shit, or I try to. But it's mostly the podcast because I'm able to talk long form and really, really try to elaborate my thoughts. But also, I read the book, I take notes on it, I want to share the notes, and then I want to use it to inspire you to be better people and make better decisions, how to be happier for yourself, and all of the good shit that comes with it. So, I'm live on YouTube and Facebook. If you're with me now, you already know that. But for those of you that show up or listen to the podcast later in the week, come join me Monday morning, 8 a.m. or sometimes 8:25 a.m. and you'll be able to chat with me and discuss all your thoughts and this and that. So, I'm gonna start introducing next week's book this week. I'm gonna start doing that, so you can read along if you want. For those of you who are here most of the time, or if you'd rather just come here and get the synopsis, I usually try to do it in 60 to 90 minutes. Sometimes it's longer, and not very often is it shorter than 60 minutes. So, yeah, you could get all of my content on Cadence on my blog website, which is cadenkellysblog.wordpress.com. Also on Substack, I don't use that very often though. I think it's cadenkelly.substack.com, or is it www.substack.com/cadenkelly? I don't know, but just go to the WordPress one. So yeah, I'm sorry that I'm a little late. That's kind of been the theme lately. I used to intermittent fast in the mornings, so I would go to the gym and then come straight to the podcast, and I'd have it timed that way, and it would work out pretty well. But recently, I've stopped doing the fasting. I've been eating in the mornings, and Hardy boy, take your shirt off. That's not gonna happen. Sorry, that's just not gonna happen. My basement's like 50 degrees because it doesn't get as much heat as upstairs. So no, you'll see my rock hard tits, which is probably what the people want to see, but not today. I'm going to leave you hanging. I used to intermittent fast, but now I don't, but I haven't changed my time schedule, so I still show up with just enough time to get on the podcast. But now I make breakfast and I get ready and things, and it sets me way back. So, but I also, I went to bed way too late last night because the book that I read this week was 27 hours long, and I had like 4 hours left to read last night, so I was plugging away, and then I slept like shit, and my ear plugged up again, and yeah, just the whole 9 yards. So no matter, we're here anyway. Thanks for showing up, Hardy Boy on YouTube. I'm not gonna take my shirt off though, but stick around if you want to listen to some of our content. So besides that, I had a great weekend, great week. We had a beautiful day on Friday. Went golfed and got a little sun on my face. And then Saturday, tried to work in the garden, but it was freezing cold. And then I played video games most of the day. On Saturday, played poker, won a lot of money in poker, naturally. It's actually the first time I've won in a very long time. So, won in poker, won in some crazy gambling games we were playing after poker. Had a really good time. Intermittent fast. Hardy Boy says intermittent fasting ruined my gut health. A light breakfast is so good. What schedule were you on? Were you doing like an 18-hour fast? My intermittent fasting was not super legit. I think, well, it was just a little. It was a little improvised. I would, I would fast through breakfast, but I would still drink like my liquid IV and my athletic greens. Sometimes I'd have a protein shake, and then for lunch, in the lunchtime, I would usually have some nuts and jerky. But then I'd gorge for dinner. And now my diet is pretty much the same. I just have eggs and some avocado for breakfast. I just have some jerky for lunch. So it's still pretty low in calories, which is what I'm going for. I'm still trying to slim up a little bit. But yeah. What was I saying? Good week. Yeah, it was a good week. Weather's going to be shit this week, though. And that's just what you get because it's April. And then May will be pretty good, and then June will be solid. So we're hanging on tight. All right. Anyway, we got 27 hours of audiobook to go through, so I'm going to get started. Sleep. He says sleep, then not eat lunch until 11 or 12. That would vary between 12 to 14 hours. Yeah. I think a lot of the intermittent fasting too, it works. It works. Like if you're exercising, I don't know if you had scheduled exercise certain times, but I tried to exercise in my time of fast too. So I would. What was I doing for exercise though? I think I was just lifting, and my lifts kind of sucked. But now that I've been eating more frequently, not more calories, but more frequently. I think I have better lifts. So the last few days, or the last it's been a couple months rather since I've been eating like this. I think since February the beginning of February. I started eating breakfast again. Anyway, let's get started. I read Influence, The Psychology of Persuasion by Robert B. Cialdini. He says his name a few times in the audiobook, and I believe he pronounces his last name Cialdini. But it's spelt Cialdini. Very Italian, right? And then when you listen to him talk, he narrated the book. He sounds like a Canadian. Sounds like he has a pretty thick Canadian accent, which is awesome. So, let's talk about Cialdini real quick. He's got a little bio in the back. Yeah, I didn't sleep well last night. I kind of feel congested. I don't think I'm sick. I've also had crazy allergies. Last week they were wicked. When I took my medicine, I just didn't sleep well, so I'm not feeling 100%. Dr. Robert Cialdini is a Regents Professor Emeritus of Psychology. What does that mean? Regents Professor Emeritus. Emeritus. I don't know what that word is. It kind of reminds me of the Emirates flight Stop. Emeritus. Having retired, but allowed to retain their title as an honor. Okay, so he's a retired professor, but he's retained his title. Cool. He's a Regents Professor of Psychology and Marketing at Arizona State University. He is the author of 3 New York Times bestsellers, including Influence, The Psychology of Persuasion, which is what we're doing today. Yes, with an exclamation point, and Persuasion. Influence has sold more than 5 million copies and has been translated into 44 languages. Cialdini is the president and CEO of Influence at Work, which provides programs on the ethical use of the science of influence. Interesting. Interesting. He is recognized as a thought leader and pioneer for his rigorous scientific studies, publishing, and popular speaking programs exploring the psychology factors that lead us to agree to requests. Among Robert Cialdini's many honors and awards are his tenure as president of the Society of Personality and Social Psychology and his membership in the National Academy of Sciences as well as the American Academy of Arts and Sciences. So he's a smart guy is what is the main point. And he's a handsome devil too. Why are all these authors ultra handsome? You know? Let's see. Cialdini attributes his long-standing interest in the intricacies of social influence to being raised in an entirely Italian family, check, in a predominantly Polish neighborhood in a historically German city, Milwaukee. Not Canadian, but that's a similar accent. Milwaukee in an otherwise rural state. It's a stupid word. By the way, I feel like every book ever is a New York Times bestseller. You know what I mean? What goes into being a New York Times bestseller? Does the New York Times sell your book, or when they like your book? Or is it just a title you get so that people will buy your book? Because I really feel like every book I've read has been a New York Times bestseller. So whatever, man. This book has been out. It's been available for a long ass time though. The first publication was in 1984, revised in 94, revised again in 2007, and then most recently revised 2021. So how many years is that? 37 years? Still adding shit. And he talks about COVID in here, so it's very up to date. So that's influence, and that's Cialdini, an Italian Milwaukee man. He his voice, I did not enjoy listening to his book, listening to him. It's 27 hours and he talks really slow and he kind of talks like this. His voice has that low rumbly sound. And about halfway through I realized that I should just speed him up, and that helped. But still, it's very quiet and he kind of talks like this. So it wasn't the best book to listen to, and consequently, I'm sure I missed a lot of meat. But about halfway through, yeah, it sped up, and then I started enjoying it, and I got a lot of notes towards the end. So I still got a lot of content to go through. Don't you worry. Okay, so before I start the book, I'm gonna introduce the book with my philosophy, and before I do that, I'm gonna drink some coffee. So the book is called Influence: The Psychology of Persuasion, and here's something that I have talked about before, something that I've been talking a lot about with my family, because I have a brother who's going to do summer sales, and this is he's never going to listen to my podcast, and that's fine because he could do whatever he wants, but he should be learning how to be persuasive, because if you want to sell, you have to speak to the customer. But here's my dilemma. I don't necessarily think sales and influence is unethical. And what is this school that he Influence at Work? So Cialdini, he's the president of Influence at Work, which provides programs on ethical use of the science of influence. So if he is providing ethical use of influence, there is unethical use of influence, and I call it manipulation. And a lot of people manipulate for their own gain, and even worse, they manipulate others they take from others to boost themselves. So that's like the most heinous thing, is to degrade someone else for your own success or for your own well-being. And it is it is in the world of persuasion, in the world of influence. I can't imagine that it's will ever be wholly ethical. So my dilemma, and thinking about my brother doing sales, I did summer sales, and I remember, holy shit, I got boned so many times because of some, not so many times, but I got boned a few times by knocking doors with. Okay, I'll just tell you a short little story. I was struggling because I for a lot of reasons I just wasn't closing sales, and I could tell you why. I have my own excuses, but um, the point of the story is I wasn't doing well, and one of the owner's brother, came out and knocked with me just to kind of help me out. And all the sales that we would close, he would sign in my name. And we came across a young couple at their home. They were working in their yard and started chatting about pest control. And he was taking the lead, and I was just I was there. And um, they agreed to a follow up appointment, but they did not agree to the service. But the homie that I was with said the only way we could have a follow up appointment is if you sign the contract. So they signed the contract, and too bad for them because they should have read the contract. Because when you sign, you commit to 5 services for X amount of dollars and this and that. So, and basically, when you sign, he set a date for a return appointment, quote unquote, and the return appointment was the service. So, on the return appointment, the technician knocked on the door. The people weren't home. He serviced the house, and they got a bill. And since he signed it in my name, I was the guy that they were calling. I was the guy that they were furious at because they didn't want the service. They just wanted the follow-up appointment, whatever that means. And so anyway, I've never blocked anybody's phone number, and that was the first phone number I've ever blocked because they were so mean. And I totally understood why they were so mean. There was nothing I could do at that point. They had signed the contract. The homie had made them sign the contract for the return appointment, quote unquote, and whatever. Totally manipulative. No, he didn't explain the context of the contract. He didn't explain that if when you sign this that you agree to the services, and that when you get service that you're going to be charged, and when you're charged for one, you're going to be charged for all 5, and whatever. So they were furious, and but the reason people do that is because that homie got me a sale and got me some money in my pocket. So a lot of people in the sales world, and probably not even a lot, maybe the minority of people in the sales world are manipulative and will take advantage of people for their own benefit. And I can't get behind that. And I struggled in the sales world, at the door-to-door sales, and for a lot of reasons. And I wasn't I'm very well, well, I don't want to say I'm well spoken, but I understood the context of the sale, and I could deliver it really well, but I didn't ever counter argue or rebuttal with anybody. So I just turned around on the first rejection. And the point of sales is it's all about getting through rejection, right? It's about overcoming rejection and looking past smoke screens and trying to close a sale. And so anyway, my sales and my mission behavior was pretty much the same way. I was a salesperson to the people that wanted the service. I was walking around. I was a messenger of the Lord for pest control. Here, hello, I'm Caden with blank pest control, and I have a discount on pest control. And if you've been looking into it, then I'm your guy because I can give you a deal. And I just took the low hanging fruit. Really, I didn't go reaching or try selling like crazy to people that didn't really care for it. So the people that I sold for not near full price. They still got a discount, but near full price because they were interested in it. And most of the other people who were selling a lot of contracts were selling really low number contracts. So, anyway, I try explaining that to my brother, and sales it's about selling. It's about influencing them, persuading them to buy your product, to buy your service. And so again, sales is not unethical, but it can easily be unethical. It can be manipulative. So my philosophy, and the same with religion. I proselytized Mormonism. It's the same thing. So my philosophy, I said, influencing other people is wonderful when done genuinely and with the intention to help others. It is evil when done to manipulate others that harm them for your own. For yeah, I said that kind of silly, but that's pretty much what I just said. To benefit off of them, from them, or to weaken them for your own success. This book is vital to recognize when and how others may be trying to influence you for their gain rather than out of genuine interest, especially when you are vulnerable. That's my philosophy. So the book, Cialdini, just explains pretty much all aspects of influence. And he gives way too many examples and goes through way too many studies, but he does. And that's why he's so well versed in this. This is, he's been doing it how many years? 37 years at least since he published this book. So he knows what the hell he's talking about. Just so many examples. I think that's why the book was so long. There's 8 chapters of persuasion. He could have just talked about the principle and then had cited the references, and the book would be 3 hours long. And that's the book that I want. And that's what I'm trying to do with the podcast because it was way too long. But it was really good. I'd probably give it like a high 7 out of 10 because the length could have been trimmed down tremendously. And is the narration anyway. So, influence. You who are listening, understand when other people, this book and this podcast, I'm trying to help you understand when other people are trying to influence you to do something for themselves, or if they're trying to help you to improve yourself. We're all influencing each other all the time. Most of the time subconsciously. It's part of our nature, as he'll explain. It's part of our nature to agree and disagree to things subconsciously, because if we had to think about every decision we made, we would be inefficient creatures. But part of the reason why humans are so efficient is because we can make decisions without having to think about them. However, we have to ensure that our decisions are working for our benefit and that we're not degrading ourselves to help somebody else, right? If you want to live a good life, then you shouldn't sacrifice your own well-being for somebody else. All right, so the book is broken into 9 chapters, and there's 7 influences, excuse me. The first chapter is called Levels of Influences. I took a few notes. He says price alone can psychologically indicate quality. That's a judgmental heuristic. It's not pertinent. This is the contrast principle. People are more likely to buy less expensive. Yeah, that's not pertinent either. I think the most important thing from that chapter is he often refers to how humans, he says, click, run. But on his website, it's described as click, whir, WHIRR. But in the book, he says click, run. And that's humans' automatic response to behavior to environment. So from his website, he says we have conditioned responses to some triggers. Yes, click, run. So, is there an example I could think of right off the spot? Nothing coming to mind, but I think you get the idea. It's kind of it's our reaction, or it's our intuition. It's our habits. It's just a reaction to the world, the external events in the world. So, click, run. Chapter 2, reciprocation. This is the first principle of influence, the first level of influence. Consider, I made a note. Consider the art of thinking clearly. Who wrote that book? We did that. That was like one of the first books. Rolf Dobelli. That's right. The Art of Thinking Clearly. He talks about reciprocity, and his comment on reciprocity echoes exactly what Cialdini is saying. From The Art of Thinking Clearly, I took a note. My note was, the good part of reciprocity is it breeds trust in each other. It is the core of cooperation. You do a favor for me, I'll do a favor for you. You scratch my back, I'll scratch your back. The bad part of reciprocation is retaliation. It gives us an inclination of obligation to do things that you wouldn't otherwise do. So, reciprocity breeds trust and is the base, it's the core of cooperation with other people. However, if someone does something for you, so of the example I remember in Rolf Dobelli's The Art of Thinking Clearly is he says to never accept a free drink because it might make you feel inclined to do something, to do a favor for that person. So, in fact, Cialdini says the same thing. He says if you're a lady and you're at the club, guys will buy you drinks and then they'll invite you to go back to their apartment. And statistically, women feel more inclined to go back with the guy, even if they don't like the guy, because they bought a drink and and he was nice to them. So you see this. You see how influence. This is the psychology of this is fascinating to me because even though you might be a smart person, you might be quote unquote awake. When somebody does a favor for you and they're like, "Well, can you do this for me?" Like if your friend helps you move, and then they ask you to do something like mow their fucking lawn, I don't know. You might say, "Well, he did a favor for me, I should do that for him." And even though you wouldn't have done that otherwise, and if you're a girl and a guy buys you a drink, and then later on the night he says, "Let's go back to my place," and the girl's like in her head, I don't really like him. I don't know who he is. He's a complete stranger, but he was nice to me. He bought me a drink. So maybe I should just go be courteous. This kind of, the psychology of this is so fascinating. It makes us behave in ways contrary to our internal nature, to our own nature. So to live outside of this world of influence, you have to be pretty much like enlightened, like a fucking Buddhist, right? You have to just be aware of absolutely everything. I can hear Sadhguru saying awareness. To be completely aware of what's happening around you. But this is spilling my coffee because I'm going crazy. Hold on. Shit. All right. Influence, it compels us to behave in ways that we wouldn't otherwise behave. That's why I don't love sales, is because a lot of people, the people that buy these contracts don't care for pest. If I want something, I'm going to go look into it, I'm going to go buy it. But I've already had several door-to-door sales guys come to my house for window cleaning, for pest control, for solar, or maybe it was window repair, whatever. But I'm not interested in any of those things. And if I was, I would go fucking buy it, or I would look into it. But the idea, as we kind of explain, is you can change people. It's the psychology of persuasion. I'm kind of being repetitive, but we humans, when we aren't aware, we have no awareness. We're easily influenced. We're easily persuaded, and we behave in ways that we wouldn't otherwise behave because of how other people influence us, of how a good salesperson comes to your door and makes you believe that you should buy their product or you should buy their service, even though you wouldn't do it. And I don't know if I took this note down later on, but people that are most easily influenced are people that are vulnerable. And how many times, for you Mormons that are listening to this, how many times better yet, the missionaries that are listening, how many times were you told that the best families to teach on your mission are the families that have recently gone through a tragedy? Because the thing that people relate to the most with in the gospel is their love for their family or their family relationships. So Mormons, I don't mean to say degrading, but they prey on this aspect in the secular world and bring families into the church because of this dynamic. Well, if you love your family so much, then you should you should join the gospel because you can live with your family forever. But otherwise, you can't live with your family forever. And for vulnerable families, if someone just recently lost a loved one, Mormons I remember this was like the core principle of being a missionary. If you just lost a loved one, it's your duty to explain to these families your family member's not lost. You can live with them forever, and you have to join the church and take the covenants and do all the things. Otherwise, you can't be with them forever. It's preying on vulnerable people. So the most easily influenced people are the most vulnerable people, and we're all vulnerable at some times in our life. And it's not bad to be vulnerable because if you remember anything from Brene Brown, vulnerability is the only way to improve. You have to expose yourself to environments that you're not familiar with, that you're not comfortable with, to succeed, to improve, or to try something new, and then maybe you suck at it and you feel vulnerable, you feel weak or exposed. And when if you go, like for me, if I went and took a jujitsu class, I wouldn't know what the fuck I'm doing. But I would be surrounded by people who do. So they would be heavy influences for me, and I would rely on their expertise and their experience. And it's a good thing. Being influenced and being vulnerable are not bad things. The key component I think that's missing for these people is awareness. Like Sadhguru says, awareness. If you're not aware of how these people are influencing you, they can take advantage of you. Not all people do. Like I said, I think it's the minority of most fields are taking advantage of these vulnerable people. But we're most influenced when we're vulnerable. So when my brother goes and does summer sales, he's going to be in a completely new environment. I don't want to say where he's going, but he'll be in a completely new environment doing something he's never done before, and exposing himself, not in a sexual way. Wow, why did my mind go there? But he'll be in a vulnerable place on people's doorsteps, an unwelcome guest, and he'll have to try to convince these people to buy his service, to buy his product, and anyway, he'll have to rely on the experience and the expertise of his trainers, of his managers, of his other experienced coworkers to succeed. So, anyway, I think my point is getting across. Kayla Sierra, I support you always. Yes, baby, I support you always. We do this together. Thanks for tuning in. We're talking about reciprocity. More on reciprocation. Whoa, why is that word? Reciprocation. Wow, that was weird. I think I just had a stroke. Free samples increase sales. Reciprocation from mistakes will give customers a curiously better experience than a seemingly mistake-free experience. What does that mean? Well, the free samples is the reciprocity thing. When you go to Costco and they say, try our sausages, and then you try the sausage and they say, now buy a package of it. And you're like, well, I mean, it might sound silly. You're like, well, I just want the free sample, so you don't buy it. But a lot of people are influenced to buy the wieners. And that's why Costco does it. That's why Sam's Club does it. That's why Audible and audiobooks does samples of books, free samples, because of the power of how heavily influenced we are. Me, I'm a customer, and I'm looking for books all the time, so I'm listening to a lot of free samples of books. And I buy books based off of a good sample. Really, I read the bios, the descriptions, some of the reviews, and then I listen to a sample. And then if I like the sample, I buy the book. And maybe it would change if there were no samples available. I was just going off of the title or something. But even then, it's another tactic. If you just the title alone is supposed to be influencing enough for you to purchase the book. So anyway, I go to Sam's Club and I get free samples because I want the free sample, and I'm always hungry. So, but I don't care to buy the stuff because I'm not interested in the stuff unless it's a fucking good thing. If the sausage is really good, I'll probably buy a package. And I probably wouldn't have bought a package if there wasn't a sample. That's how influence works. It's fascinating to me. But I don't know what that second comment I made was. Reciprocation for mistakes will give customers a curiously better experience. Oh, I remember. Like if you're overcharged or double charged for something and you're like, what the hell? And then they're like, oh, I'm sorry, we'll refund you all of your money and you can keep the product. That's a better experience for the customer psychologically than having a perfect experience with the company all the time. Like if you buy something for $10 and you always get it for $10, you have a better experience when every now and then that company screws up and then gives you a favor or does you a solid. That's reciprocation. And psychologically, we have a better experience in that than having always having a good experience. That's just the studies. I'm telling you, it's 27 hours. He talks about why for 27 hours. If you don't believe me, go read the book. He talks about the rejection then retreat tactic. Bargain ridiculously. Bleh. I start talking and my mouth gets so dry. Hold on. Bargain ridiculously high when you know it's unreasonable and make the fallback counter seem like a retreat. So this is another sales tactic. You knock on the door. Hey, I'm selling pest control. It's normally $500 for a year-long contract. I'm selling it for $400. There it is. And even better than that, you say, hey, I'm giving out a stellar deal. I'm selling pest control for $500. And they're like, holy shit, that's a lot of money. And then you're like, well, this is this and that. And they're like, nah, we're not interested. I'm not interested. Okay, all right. Well, I'm already here. My truck's going to be here. I'm trying to save some money for college, this and that. I've got a family back home. I'm trying to pay the bills. I need the sale. So how about I do it for you, $400, or I'll do it for $350. Nah, I just don't care. I don't care for pests. Okay, all right. Well, it's really important to me that I take care of the neighborhood. I take care of you. How about $300? Oh, you'll do it for $300? Yeah. Boom. That's rejection, then retreat. It's a reciprocation tactic. I hope my brother listens to this. This is all my fucking wisdom. And it's all really good. He should read the book. It's really good advice for going to do sales and just for life. And for the rest of us to be fucking awake and not be heavily influenced by those around us. Or by by people we don't want to be influenced by. Like I want good influences. It's like the people you follow on social media. They're influencing you every day. And they because you are consuming their content. So are you consuming content that supports your beliefs and your values? Or are they changing your beliefs and values? Or are they reinforcing them, right? Everything that we engage with is an influence. And anyway, it's pretty fascinating. Chapter 3, liking. We comply with people we like. Simple as that. Humans like physical attractiveness, similarity, compliments, increased familiarity through cooperation, and association. We like people who are like us, and we like people who talk about us positively behind our backs. The association principle is attaching people we like to objects or experiences, like association. So remember the Lincoln car commercials? We like everyone who doesn't like Matthew McConaughey, and then you put him behind a Lincoln, and now everybody likes Lincoln. That's the association principle. We combine something we like with something we don't know about, and then we automatically like that thing. What's another example? Oh, it's a stupid one, but the first thing that came to my head was the Utah Jazz bear. I don't even think it works, but like we like the Jazz, and then they put the bear in there, and now we like bears? No, that's stupid. That's a stupid analogy. Stupid comparison. The McConaughey one is better. We put McConaughey behind a car, and now all of a sudden we like the car. So different than reciprocation, people do favors for us. We're more willing, more likely to comply with them. we also comply with people we like. People who are attractive. There's a whole section on just like physical attractiveness. Salespeople do better when they're attractive. It's statistically true. People that we're similar with in stature, but also in behavior and things that we like. Compliments, when people talk positively about behind our backs. Familiarity through cooperation, working with somebody. I think I didn't make any other notes about that. So that's the third influence. Got nothing else to say, I guess. Chapter 4, the third influence. Sorry, liking is the second influence. The third one, chapter 4, social proofs. I'm going to get some more coffee. Jeez, my mouth is dry. Brought an energy drink, too, to boost me up because I'm fucking... If I can make a plug for any energy drink, I would say Zoa. This is Dwayne The Rock Johnson's energy drink, and it's even got his signature. It's got his sign of approval. In every video of him on Instagram, he's drinking a Zoa, or he's drinking Teremana tequila. But it's supposed to, he calls it the healthy warrior. So, and anything that The Rock does, I will do because The Rock is a god. That's a perfect example of the association principle. I actually don't even care for energy drinks, but every now and then I need a little pick me up, and I idolize Dwayne Johnson, and he has a fucking energy drink, and I'm like, I will drink his energy drink. That's exactly what this book is about. That's crazy. I'm a victim. We're all fucking victims. And are we mindless victims? Oh, baby, listen to that. Pineapple coconut Zoa. We're all victims, but are we mindless? Are we mindless victims, or do we pay attention when we're influenced and when we buy shit, when we go buy someone else's shit? Are we doing it consciously or subconsciously, or would it be unconsciously? Chapter 4, the third social proof, or the third influence, social proof. Oh, it's fucking delicious. This is a direct comparison to evidence or evidential proof. Popularity precipitates popularity. He says the statistically greatest reason for Japan's mask wearing during COVID was so high because of seeing others wear masks, because of that factor alone. And I didn't write the whole study down. I'm not going to read the whole study. He talks about all the different aspects of why so many people wore masks in Japan, and he says the single greatest reason, or statistically greatest reason rather, was by people seeing other people wear masks. And of course there's other influences, because I still see people wear masks, and I'm still not inclined to wear masks. So I can't really back up that's him on that study. I'm just relaying the information. That's social proof, though. Seeing other people doing something reaffirms or convinces us to do something else. It's like keeping up with the Joneses, right? Your next door neighbor pulls up with the boat. It compels you to go get your own boat or some shit. That's social proof. There are 3 optimizing conditions that especially influence vulnerable people. When we are unsure of what is best to do, uncertainty. When evidence of what is best to do comes from numerous others, the many. And when evidence of what is best to do comes from people like us, similarity. And we're all victims of this, isn't it? It's just, it's like I said. I kind of said at the beginning. Are you gonna be? Are you a sheep? Are you mindlessly following the data, or not the data, but the information and buying shit just because everyone else is doing it? That's social proof. Or are you consciously doing it because you think that'll improve your life, or that'll put you in a better place, or whatever? He talks about Jonestown. He references Jonestown. For those of you who don't know what Jonestown is, several years ago there was a preacher from California who he was radical, took his followers to somewhere in Central or South America, and They built him a temple and did some crazy shit, crazy cult-like shit. And the temple was going to get shut down by the government, I think the U.S. government. And he convinced, I think it was 900 people to kill themselves before they were invaded. 900 people to drink poison, and they administered poison to their kids and then drank it themselves. 900 people died from this. They called the whole thing Jonestown. So it's something like this is, this is right up his alley. Why are people influenced to kill themselves in mass numbers like that when to someone like me or to most of us listening, it doesn't make any sense. Why would anybody with the right mind do that? And he says the evidence that they're all weak-minded people is not clear. It's not, you can't they can't support that wholeheartedly. However, he does say, which is why I made that note, there are vulnerable people. There will always be vulnerable people, and they follow the crowd. It's called social proof. They might not think it's the right thing to do, and they might think that it's crazy, but they see somebody else doing it, or they see a group of people doing it, and they convince themselves this must be the right thing to do. I said there will always be radical followers, and their obedience is convincing to those vulnerable and unfamiliar. So I remember as he retold the story when, I don't know what his name, something Jones, he says, we need to drink this poison. We need to drink this and kill ourselves, because I think it was something to do with we'll be exalted in another life to live with someone or do something like live with God. And straight away, a woman from the crowd, from the group, took her kid up there, and gave the poison to her kid, and then drank it herself, and then went into a field, and everyone watched, and she convulsed for several minutes, her and her baby, and died. And she's considered a radical follower. And why people are radical followers of anything? For some reason, they have a deep conviction of and belief of it, I guess. And I'm just kind of speculating, or I'm just thinking about it. When you really believe in a person or a principle, for whatever reason, some people will blindly follow them. But for the vast majority of Jonestown victims, they were not radical followers. They were vulnerable and they were unfamiliar. Again, Mr. Jones, excuse me, Mr. Jones was a preacher in California first. Perhaps he gained so much trust because he seemed rational and reasonable and supportive to the weak and vulnerable people back home. And then he exploited their vulnerability and their trust for him to follow him to South or Central America and eventually kill themselves, build up a temple and kill themselves. So but again, we're all victims to it. Like I don't want to be the COVID guy, but I can think of how so many people are afraid. Everybody was unfamiliar and vulnerable when COVID began. No one knew what the fuck was happening. So when a few people spoke to someone's bias, whether it was this is no big deal, forget about it, or this is a really big deal, social distance, vaccines, lockdowns, whatever spoke to your bias, you followed those people. And unless you knew the science all the way thoroughly, which, nobody did 2 years ago when it was happening, you couldn't make rational decisions. You had to trust the people that were experts, right? And we'll talk a little bit more about experts in chapter 5 called authority. But you follow people that you trust, or you follow people that speak to your bias. And for all of us, that we were all vulnerable and we were all unfamiliar. So we had to react to the experts. I guess that'll just be our segue. I just want to reiterate, though, the 3 optimizing conditions that especially influence vulnerable people is uncertainty, the many, and similarity. When we are unsure of what to do, when what's best to do comes from numerous people, the most, the many, and then what's best to do comes from people like us. Okay, those are the three optimizing conditions to influence vulnerable people. Chapter 5 is the fourth influence, authority. I got to take another drink. I may feel like shit, but my brain is going. This is awesome. I'm having a much better time relaying this book than I did reading it. I just got to be honest. Okay. He references Milgram's experiment for a teacher. Oh, yes, for a teacher to administer a shock to a learner. Okay, Milgram. I don't know who Milgram is, but some time ago, you might have heard the experiment where researchers put in a room a teacher and a learner, right? So, a teacher and a learner. So the researchers would assign these characters roles, and the researchers would ask the learner a question, and if the learner got the question wrong, the teacher was supposed to administer a shock to the learner. So, and then with every wrong answer, the shock would be increased or amplified. And this is a crazy, it's a crazy experiment, crazy study. But the gist of the study is, it was a placebo, quote unquote. The learner, the person being shocked, was an actor, but the teacher didn't know, and there were no shocks actually administered. But the teacher, was told repeatedly, administer shock by the researchers. And the voltage just kept increasing and increasing, and the actor, the learner, was pretending to be shocked, and it went from very mild to very severe, and eventually to agonizing amounts of pain, voltage-wise. And I don't know if there's a level of voltage that, when administered, will kill a person. I don't know if it ever got to that level. I don't know if they played or faked death, staged it. But the teacher, the person administering the shock, had no idea that it was fake. Anyway, so I'm going to finish my note really fast. We have a deep-rooted obedience to authority. This holds sway on humans in religion and government. The pro of obedience to authority starts as a child. Our obedience to parents and teachers dictate our punishment and rewards, which might lead to blind obedience to authority as an adult to government, religion, medicine, etc. So the gist of the experiment was, they learned that humans, we all have a tendency to obey authority. And in that experiment, the authority was the researchers and asking the questions. And the teacher, the person giving the shock, was listening. Even when the actor was flailing in fake pain, the teacher continued to administer the shock against their better judgment. And he gives examples of really educated people, like lawyers, being the teacher with the shock and saying, I can't believe, you need to stop this. And the reader say, deliver the shock. And they would just resentfully shock the person, fake shock the person, right? But it's our tendency. We're all inclined to follow obedience and we justify it in so many ways. And some of these subjects were saying, well, the researchers wouldn't let me kill this person, so they have everything under control. This and that. They create a bunch of excuses. They give reason to why the researcher would allow this to happen. So they continued to do it until, even to the point where the voltage was very high, was basically maxed out. So, but this feeds back into social proof. We follow we follow authority, even when because we're uncertain, because we're unfamiliar, and because we're vulnerable, and we follow the crowd, and then we'll follow the experts because we don't know. And again, about COVID, we didn't know all of the shit. We know a lot more now than we did then. but we didn't know all the shit, and there were a bunch of different opinions, and a lot of people followed the advice that spoke to their biases. But even now I feel like all of politics has been blown up into this. It's like politics now is like a sport. People wave political flags in their yards that say "fuck Biden" or "let's go Brandon" or whatever, and then they'll wave Trump flags. And I guess there's not really even a Biden, like a pro Biden. Is there a pro Biden flag that people wave in their yard? Or pro Democrat flag? I think it's all just the right. It's all like a sports game, though. They've people have doubled down on their bias. They're the authorities that confirm their biases, right? I'm gonna keep going on my notes. There are different symbols of authority, titles like PhD, Robert B. Cialdini, PhD. That's a title. Clothes. He gives a. He shares a study, if I remember it right. It was something about someone stood on a corner at a busy sidewalk, busy intersection, and people were trying to cross the street whichever way. And the guy would stand there, and when the thing said "don't cross," the guy would say "cross." Just the guy that was standing there would tell the people, "Go ahead, cross." And he tried it in just regular clothes, and people wouldn't cross. And then he tried it in a business suit. Which, what does a business suit have to do with directing traffic or helping people cross the street, right? But people listened to the guy when he was in the business suit, when he was like, "Walk," but the thing was like, "Don't walk." People would walk. So but then that translates to doctors wearing lab coats. There was a study about the longer a doctor's lab coat, the more believable they were, the more that people trusted them. It happens when people wear business suits, the more sharply dressed they are. What else? Other kinds of uniforms. This is a symbol of authority, and the last one is trappings, which he describes as having expensive things like having nice cars, having nice house, having nice equipment, all of it. It becomes a symbol of authority. And the thing that just popped into my head is, I don't know why, but photographers. When a photographer is, like, you go do family pictures or portraits, and the photographer has a nice camera hanging down their neck. Like, the bigger the camera, the bigger that fucking lens thing that goes on the end, the more believable, the more I believe that they're a better photographer, even though the lens might not have anything to do with how well of a photographer they are, how well they can manipulate the light exposure and shit and whatever, and then edit them later. It has no direct implication that they're a good photographer. And same thing with the doctor thing. It reminds me, he shared that Dayquil and NyQuil, when they were coming out, they would, or not coming out, but when they were selling their NyQuil like crazy, they would have fake actor doctors. They'd have actors play as doctors on their commercials. And the guy would say, "I might not be a real doctor, but I approve of this medicine," or something. But sales, the guy was an actor in some TV show, and he was just convinced. He just played a doctor in a TV show, and the guy wasn't a real doctor. But people bought NyQuil, or they bought Dayquil because of this. What was it called before? The liking influence. They liked the actor, and even though he wasn't a real doctor and had no real authority to sell medicine, people bought the medicine. So titles, clothing, and trappings, or nice things. He says honesty enhances trust. He notes authorities are usually experts and we shouldn't dismiss most authority. Again, it's not bad to be influenced. We shouldn't feel like when I listen to these studies, I'm like, I don't want to be influenced by anybody. But it's not bad to be influenced. He says, consider, is this authority truly an expert at what they're trying to influence you to do or believe or to buy? And then the second point is, how truthful can I expect the expert to be? So again, it's not about blind persuasion. Don't be blindly convinced to do or buy or believe anything. The point is to understand, it's to have awareness, to understand why this person is influencing you, if they're trustworthy, and if it validates not even validates, but if it supports your values. That's part of the gig, right? We're always influenced, and we wouldn't be efficient creatures if we didn't have these reactionary behaviors to external events, to influences. We have to, it's just a matter of understanding why we're influenced, right? So if you are vulnerable, if you have a loved one that dies and then someone knocks on your door and says, well, I'm a missionary for this church and you can live with your family forever. And so listen to my message and I'll tell you how. Or if you see a fucking rat in your basement and then someone knocks on your door and says, I'm selling pest control. Or if someone throws a baseball through your window and then someone knocks on your door and says, I noticed you have a broken window and I can replace your window for dirt cheap. Would you buy their product anyway? Or are you doing it because they're convincing you, because they have these characteristics of the symbols of authority? How easily convinced or persuaded are you? This is so interesting to me. But that's the fourth influence, authority. We blindly follow people who are considered experts, and he says it's not bad to do that because most people have received the credentials, they've received the experience, they know what the fuck they're talking about. And I do it too. Like, I read their books. I read a lot of books by experts. Cialdini, this book's been out for 37 years. I consider him an expert in this field, and I'm influenced by what he's telling me about influence. But I hear it about exercise. I hear it about diet. I hear about nutrition, which is the fucking same thing as diet. I hear about sleep patterns. I hear about mental health. I hear about religion, about philosophy. You hear what other people are saying, and then do you just accept it as at face value, or do you consider it and pick out the truths from the farce and make better decisions? The whole point is to make better decisions, to cognitively make better decisions. I'm going to keep going. Chapter 6, scarcity, the fifth influence. I drink some of this Zoa because I'm influenced by Dwayne The Rock Johnson. Scarcity. Humans are motivated more by the thought of losing something than the thought of gaining something of equal value. We're more motivated by the thought of losing something than the thought of gaining something of equal value. So we're more motivated by losing $100 than by gaining $100, statistically. He mentions Mormon temples. Yes, I'm not just talking about Mormons for no reason. He talks about Mormon temples. He says they do they implement the scarcity tactic with temples. And you might be familiar that when a temple is erected, they hold open houses for 2 weeks or something, and the general public can tour the temple and see all of the detail and the beauty of it. And then it closes after 2 weeks, and then it's only available for temple recommend holding Mormons. So it's the scarcity. It's the thought of not being able to attend the temple that makes the temple so valuable. It's the scarcity influence. You might not be interested in temples and seeing temples or in Mormons or anything, but when the Mormons say, we have something that you can't participate in, you are more influenced by the thought of losing something than the thought of gaining something of equal value. You are more influenced by not having access to the temple than by having access to the temple. Is that crazy thought? So yeah, he lives in Arizona, and he talked about the Gilbert Temple going up, and he, having no interest in Mormonism, found out about the temple open house, and he says for 2 weeks, come check out the temple, after which it'll be closed to the public. And he's like, he said that he has no interest in being Mormon or whatever, but he was greatly intrigued in going to see the temple. And he invited a friend, and the friend was like, "Why would you want to do that?" And he says, "Well, because after 2 weeks, it's not going to be available. So don't you want to see it?" And the friend's like, "Well, would you want to see it? And do you care to join the church?" And he's like, "No, I just want to see the temple." And he's like, "Well, then why would you go? If you're not interested in joining the church, why would you go?" This is how we're influenced, and it happens all the time. He rated the most effective influences to get customers to buy something from you. The most effective. From top to bottom. Scarcity, social proof, urgency, concessions, expertise, and liking. Concessions is, I put discounts by the side. Censorship or restriction increases desire to hear or obtain something. So, and I said banning guns, gun control. Restricting guns makes humans more inclined to want guns. It's the scarcity principle. We're more influenced by the thought of losing something, by losing our guns, than the thought of gaining access to guns, of gaining something of equal value. He makes a very interesting point that I'll bring it up. This is the chapter I took the most notes on because it's to me, I think it's the most fascinating. This reminds me of a study about how premarital sex, I think it came from a book that I read. I don't really remember. Reminds me of a study about how premarital sex and pornography consumption is much higher in religious states in America. Most liberal states don't give a fuck. The low religious states, because high religious states like Utah talk about how premarital sex and pornography and drugs and alcohol are no good for teenagers. So teenagers consequently engage in it more in Utah and other religious states like the Bible Belt than other states that don't focus on it. They don't talk about it. The more we talk about how you shouldn't do it, the more likely teenagers are to do it. He talks about how teenagers in general are more deviant. They deviate from the rules just because of their nature, because of puberty and growing up and gaining autonomy of themselves and establishing an identity. They detach themselves from their parents and their parents' identity. They create their own, and when they're told not to do something, they feel inclined to do that thing. So the more you teach your kids not to do something, the more inclined they will be likely to do it. The more inclined they will want to do it. Statistically, it's not a given 100% of the time. Statistically, so same thing with guns for adults, and then premarital sex and pornography consumption for teenagers. I said information is valued more by scarcity than censorship. Here's an interesting thought. You talk about, you remember Joe Rogan almost got canceled. Not almost got canceled. They were trying to cancel Joe Rogan not too long ago. And not even more so. Okay. All right. Let me gather my thoughts. So Rogan has these controversial guests who share a different narrative regarding COVID and vaccines and whatever, and they the left wing media and people are pissed at Rogan, and they want to censor him because of the context of his guests. The conversations they have and how those conversations influence people not to get vaccinated and not to take the masks off and just to go against the general COVID propaganda. So they're trying to cancel Rogan, and here's what happened. Rogan wasn't canceled, but his shows now have this. They have the COVID information link attached to all of his episodes. You want real information on COVID? Well, here's the website to the CDC. So I think I was following that very closely because Rogan is my Lord and Savior. And I felt like the intention initially was to shut his podcast down, but they failed to do that. but the censorship label did show up on all of his episodes, and now they're like, "Ha, we won. This is what we wanted all along." I don't think that's true. I think that's just what they got. And so they're settling for it, and then they're justifying it. However, what did happen was Rogan has said no more political guests because of the influence that he has on the millions of people that listen to his episodes. No more political guests. He's going to stick to UFOs and diet and comedy and his friends, right? Whatever. So that's here's how the scarcity influence plays into that. So the note I took was information is valued more by scarcity than censorship. Now that what people had from Rogan was it was uncensored anti-COVID propaganda conversations, and now that's gone. We value Rogan more than we did before. We value not because we don't have the COVID conversations, but because we had them and they were taken away. Now we're influenced more by Rogan because he gave us something and then someone took it away, and now we don't have it anymore. That's scarcity. That's the scarcity principle with information. It's more valued by scarcity than censorship, by taking it away or by not having it at all. Informing a customer that their product is in short supply and then informing them that the information that the product is in short supply is private is double scarcity, which produces more than double purchase orders. That's kind of a jumbled note. But I think about this quote-unquote food shortage. I don't know anything about it, but I think about going to my butcher to get some meat, and I think about this. I have this this fake example in my head where I show up and he's like, "Hey, we're probably not going to have ground beef for a while." So that influences me to buy a lot more ground beef that they have available, right? Informing them that their product is in short supply is a scarcity tactic to make me buy more. And then on top of saying, "Hey," so he says, "Hey, we don't know if we're going to have ground beef for a while." And then saying, also, nobody knows that. We haven't told anybody. It's not public information. This is a secret between me and you. That makes me buy even more ground beef. More than double the amount that I would have bought initially. It produces more than double purchase orders. So technically, now check this out. This is so fascinating to me. So you think, okay, so the information that we're not going to have beef for a while influences me to buy more shit, to buy more food, to buy more beef. And then by saying this information is not public, it's not available to everybody, it's just between you and me and maybe the few customers that come in, it's going to make me buy even more. So now Biden announces there's a food shortage, a global food shortage. It's going to make people buy more food. Remember, like with COVID, when the supply chain shut down and everyone bought toilet paper? Well, the fact that people were influenced, one, by social proof. We got to hurry to the store. Everyone else is buying toilet paper. They must know something that I don't. So I got to go buy as much toilet paper as possible because we're not going to have any more toilet paper. Or cases of water. Or my grandma and my grandpa need distilled water for their machines, their CPAP machines or something. Distilled water is still in short supply because one, it probably is in short supply, and two, we're following the crowd. So maybe it slowed down or the supply picked back up. But anyway, this is the scarcity. So I'm just curious, when Biden says there's a food shortage, does it make people go buy more food, or does it not mean much because everybody knows, because it is public information? I don't know. Maybe it makes people go buy more, but it doesn't make them buy as much than it would if it was private information. If like the butcher told me this is not public information. So I don't know. Interesting thought. Scarcity is crazy. I said scarcity influence is more powerful when you are exposed to something desirable and then it's removed than having never experienced it and demanding it. um, a quote about family rules and governments. Quote, when it comes to freedoms, it is far more dangerous to have given for a while than to have never given at all. I'll say it again. He says regarding to government and family rules. When it comes to freedoms, it is far more dangerous to have given for a while than to have never given at all. So, governments give rights. Like, imagine, I'm going to drink some more of this. Imagine if blacks, they got the rights, or women got the right to vote, whatever. Rights were given to a group of people, and then now now government tries to take them away again, or not again, but to take them away and to diminish someone's rights or availability to rights. I'll use women's vote because it seems less controversial. Women weren't able to vote, and they fussed about it, but statistically, if you give women the right to vote, statistically, if women couldn't vote, and then you give them the right to vote, and then you take away their right to vote again later, they will be more furious after having their right removed than before when they never had the right in the first place, statistically. So for governments, think like gun rights, you give citizens the gun rights, the right to bear arms, and then you take that away from them, they'll be more furious about having guns and then getting them taken away than never having had guns in the first place. It goes with gun rights. It goes with any kind of right or privilege, marriage rights, gay privileges. If gays were given the right to vote, the right to get married in all states, and then it was taken away from them, they would be more outrageous than having never had the right to get married in the first, or the privilege to get married in the first place. I don't know what it would be technically. But it goes the same way with kids in your family dynamic. As a parent, if you say no sweets after 8 or something, and then every now and then you're like, okay, yeah, here's some ice cream after 8. And then later on down the road, you're like, okay, I'm reinforcing that rule, no more sweets after 8. The kids will be even more furious later than having never had given the right or the chance to eat ice cream after 8 before. Does that make sense? And it just applies across the board. So it's scary, but it's the scarcity influence. When you're given something and then it's taken away from you again. Oh, it's all so fascinating. Competition makes scarcity influence even more powerful. Other people getting a deal and not you. Quote, the joy is not in the enjoying of the scarcity, it's in the possessing of it. So if you're competing on a house, you're bidding on a house against somebody, the competition becomes more enticing to win the house over the other person than does winning the house. The joy is not in enjoying the scarcity. It's not in obtaining the house. It's in the possessing of it. The joy is not in the enjoy. Yeah, it's not living in the house. It's getting the house. That's where the enjoyment comes from. Yeah, there we go. So scarcity, that one's fascinating to me. We're all influenced by scarcity that way too. All right. Chapter 7, the sixth influence, commitment and consistency. These last two, well, the last one makes really clear sense. I just didn't take a lot of notes on these last two because, again, I was trying to grind these out quick. Hi. Are you leaving? Saying hi? Hi. You want to listen? You want to sit in and listen? Yeah, I'm just going to talk to the camera still. So, Chapter 7, commitment and consistency, the sixth influence, has to do with has to do with how we commit and how we commit to deals and services and products, and then our consistency in our behavior with the things that we engage with already. So the first note I said was mindless consistency is easier than conscious effort. This is like Sadhguru saying awareness. This is our awareness of what we're doing. Are we aware of our conscious behavior, of our and our reactions, our routines? Are we aware of what we do and how we think, how we behave? And instinctively, we're not, because it's easier not to think about things. It's easier not to be actively engaged in everything we do all the time. That's why humans are so productive, because we can turn on autopilot in a lot of things and operate and not have to worry about constantly being consciously aware of everything we're doing. We can turn on autopilot and get shit done. But if we're doing the wrong things, like if you have a shitty eating habit, sleeping habit, exercise habits, social media habits, video game habits, if your habits are shit, you're going to produce shit. But we turn on autopilot and we plug away at whatever we're doing. He said in the book towards the end that in the world of social media and smartphones, we humans on average check their phones more than 100 times a day, and that's the average. So there are people that do it fewer, but there are people that do it more than 100 times a day. Check their phones, and I think it's probably getting worse with like Apple Watches and wearable tech, because your wrist buzzes now, and it's so much easier to just flip your wrist up. Oh no, I don't need to talk to you, Siri. So, but that's, we just mindlessly we're checking notifications all the time. So, it's a weird duality between positive behavior and good habits versus shitty habits that produce shitty results. Commitment and consistency. Commitments are most effective when they are active, public, effortful, and voluntary, because these behaviors change self-image. Excuse me. So when, for example, he talks about the MyFitnessPal app, how they, if you're not familiar with MyFitnessPal, it used to be an Under Armour app to help people lose weight. You track your calories consumed and the water you drink, and the people who share how many calories they eat, how much exercise that they do, have significantly better results than people who keep it secret or just doing it casually. So if you're trying to lose weight, if you're trying to live a healthier lifestyle, if you want to be healthier, you have better results statistically when your commitments are active, public, effortful, and voluntary. Active meaning doing it all the time. Public meaning sharing all the information all the time. Effortful, where you do it sometimes when you don't want to do it. And voluntary, meaning you choose to do it. You're not coerced to do it. So salespeople do this. They get you to commit to. He shares a lot of examples about one of the best car salesmen in the world. He uses these tactics thoroughly with all of his customers. His commitments from his customers are active, public, effortful, and voluntary. But you can do it for yourself. If you want to be healthier, if you want to be smarter, if you want to be stronger, whatever. Anyway, but also, if someone knocks on your door and wants you to buy whatever they're trying to sell, then they're going to try to enforce these tactics on you, because again, commitments are stronger when they're active, public, effortful, and voluntary. So anyway, I'll keep going. The consistency influence goes something like this. Okay, so that's commitment. Consistency. Here is an example. This is my example. So I've been running a lot lately, training for a race, and let's say I go to a store, I go to Dick's, and someone asks me, "Are you a runner? You look like a runner." And I'm like, "Yeah, I've been training for a race." And then this is a Dick's attendant, and they're like, "Are you a runner?" I'm like, "Yeah, I've been training for a race." And they say, "Oh, well, you should come check out these new running shoes that we got. Let's go see the shoes." And we go look at the shoes, and he says, you said you do Spartan too, yeah? And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, well, we got this perfect mix between CrossFit and running shoes. Check him out, and blah, blah, blah. And then he's like, oh, you do Spartan. Like, do you like to exercise? Yeah, I love to do, I do shit with, I do kettlebells. And he's like, oh, we got this awesome kettlebell set. And then he says, now check this out. All of this aligns with everything you've been telling me, all the shit that I'm showing you. So I'll sell them all to you at a discount. Do you want to buy it? And maybe I showed up to Dick's because I wanted to go get a camping chair or something. But because of this principle of consistency, where he's enabling, he's reinforcing all of the shit that I do. I run. I need running shoes. I need trail shoes. I need kettlebells. This and that. I'm more inclined to purchase his shit because he's reinforced my behavior. And it's harder for people to say, no, I'm not interested. And he's like, well, why? You told me you do all this, and you need all of it. So I'm here to sell it to you. And I'm here to sell it to you at a discount. So you should buy it. It's an influence tactic. So are you just going to buy it because you're like, oh yeah, well, I guess he's right? Or are you consciously aware of, no, I was here to buy a camping chair, and I have some shoes that work, and I go to the gym, so I don't need kettlebells, whatever. How easily coerced are you by this consistency principle? Fascinating. Yeah, you become trapped to buy because purchasing is consistent with the decision. Be wary of being automatically and mindlessly consistent. We become inefficient if we have no routine or consistency. 2 methods to make sure we don't move to the wrong way through routine. Trust your gut and trust your heart. Ooh. So, yeah, be wary of automatic and mindless consistency. We become inefficient if we have no routines and no consistency. Again, we have to have these automatic responses because we wouldn't be efficient humans otherwise. This is his argument. This is what he says. So the point is, if you go to Dick's to buy a camping chair and they say, you look like a runner, come check out all this running shit. Get some socks, get some shoes, get some shin guards or some compression socks, get this new running top. But you're like, he says, in order to make the best decisions, trust your gut. Is this person just selling to me because they're trying to make a commission, or they're trying to meet a sales goal, or does this align with what I came here to do? And then trust your heart of hearts, which he says is your first reaction. And you know what? Maybe you do need some running shoes, and maybe you do need some kettlebells, and you're like, I just stumbled across some gold. That's where this automatic reaction comes in handy. Maybe you did go for a camping chair, but for 6 months or for 3 months, you're like, I don't have any running shoes and I don't have any exercise equipment, but I'm just lazy about it. This guy might be actually helping me out. Then it's a great time to buy some kettlebells and some running shoes. So that's commitment and consistency. Commitments are most effective when they're public, active, effortful, and voluntary, and consistency works best. Consistency works when it aligns with your values and your behavior. And the last influence, chapter 8, is unity. Kind of ties all of this together. People are willing to cooperate with people they share identity with: race, ethnicity, nationality, family. Even more so, or extended off of that, is politically, religiously, financially, or athletically. This is tribalism, and it's in our human nature. We follow people we agree with, that we like. It's unity. It's the we-ness. He calls it the not the we-ness like your pee-pee, but like W-E-ness. We, the group, the in-group. It's our in-group bias. We're more influenced by people in our in-group. And what's fascinating is he shares a lot of examples politically, how even when, like, if you're a Democrat and someone in your party, in your group, your we group, makes a mistake, the people are more inclined to justify that behavior, even though it might be wrong, even though it might be they might have fucked up. If Joe Biden fucks up, the left will always try to defend him or to back him up, and the right is going to try to degrade it or to expose it. And it's not a given; it's statistically. And I guess unless someone really fucks up or does something absolutely horrendous, maybe it doesn't hold as much weight. But we hold. We tend to comply with and agree with our in-group. Politically, religiously, financially, athletically, talks about with sports. All of us, you might not have any affiliation with the Utah Jazz. Like, you don't know any of the guys. You don't know anybody that works there. But it's your home state, and these guys live in your state, and you go to the arena and it's a bunch of Utah Jazz fans and everyone's from Utah. That is a we group. And all of a sudden you hate the Trailblazers because they're the opponent and they're not your we group. They're from Portland, right? The Portland Trailblazers? I don't fucking know. But that's, and then you hate the out group. You hate them. You support us. And when someone from when Damian Lillard, I sound like such a fucking loser. But when Damian Lillard schools Donovan Mitchell and embarrasses him, then you might feel personally embarrassed because he's part of your in-group. He's part of the Jazz. You identify with the Utah Jazz. It happens politically with your party, religiously with your religion. When someone else's religion is directly, or not directly, but when someone's beliefs directly contradict yours, they are the outgroup. They're the enemy. They're the devil, basically, literally, pretty much. It happens racially, ethnically, nationally. When you go to war, it's the USA and your allies versus the enemy. Right, and right now it's Ukraine versus Russia, and Russia's allies versus Ukraine's allies. Anyway, unity. We identify with certain groups, and then we behave with what favors our group. And if you're a Democrat, you support the fuck-ups from your party. And if you're a Republican, you support the fuck-ups from your party. And if you're a Jazz fan, you support, you enable, and you support when you support the fuck-ups of your team, whatever. Your family, your nation. It's crazy, but unity. It's another level of influence. It's tribalism, because for thousands of years, humans have relied on each other to survive. And if you were an outcast from your tribe, you most likely died. You didn't survive. So you did what your group did. You supported your group through thick and thin, and through success and through failure, and through fuck-ups and through righteousness, right? Because you need to fit in to survive. It's tribalism. It's natural. The last note I made was deception that supports a we group is viewed as superior to facts that weaken an in-group. Yeah, I just said that. Politicians support those in their party even when wrong. So that's unity, baby. And that's the book. So there was a chapter 9 is kind of a summary, and again, I kind of blazed through it. I didn't get any notes from it. Maybe there's some gold in there. But the last thing I'll say, and I'll just reiterate myself that I've said it 100 times already, we are greatly influenced by everything. And we're efficient human beings. We've created this world that we live in because we react automatically to a lot of things, to everything. And sometimes we need to slow down and check ourselves and make sure that our beliefs and our automatic responses align with what we value. And again, if you're vulnerable, if you're unfamiliar in the world, that if you're taking a leap forward and you're doing something new, you will be heavily influenced by those around you. And most of the time it's positively. like you go to a new class, you're a college or even you're a high school student and you go to a new class and you know nothing about the subject, the teacher, the people in the class. You have to just absorb everything. You're highly vulnerable and you're highly sensitive to all the information that's coming in. And our automatic response is they process the information, they follow the crowd, you follow the group, how the kids are behaving. You trust the authority of the teacher because the teacher is the teacher, and so whatever they say must be true. But then how aware, how awake are you? Are you able to hear the things the teacher is saying? Are you able to process the information from the students around you? Are you able to apply what you've learned before into what you're learning now? Are you able to think critically about everything that comes in? Sometimes, not all the time, but are you able to think critically about everything that you're learning? Sometimes your automatic responses are really good. Sometimes your automatic responses suck. So, slow down. Absorb what you're consuming, what's influencing you, and then you have to decide, is this good for me or is this bad for me? The podcast for me has been a huge piece of learning for me. I mean, I've been doing it for almost a year now, but looking into a camera, talking to nobody, and talking about a bunch of material that doesn't make sense to me is very uncomfortable. But I read these books, I listen to these books, and I absorb all the information that it takes. And then what's most important is not taking it at face value. I mean, but I'm still a victim of it too. The other day, Rogan posted something about how. Posted on Instagram that weed passed the House. This is how naive I am about politics. That the decriminalization of weed passed the House, and he posted it, and it was like, "Fuck yes." And I brought it up to a friend, and I was like, "Did you see that? Did you see this? Weed has been decriminalized." And my friend says, "Yeah, it passed the House, but it's most likely not going to pass the Senate." Or maybe it was the other way. I don't fucking know how this shit works. That's how naive I am. But I was heavily influenced by that post, and I just accepted it as at face value, and I didn't research whether it was going to pass all these other levels of whatever, of politics. I just didn't know. I don't know. I don't know how the system works. But it was a solid check for me. Instead of basing all of your beliefs and decisions off of face value, it's very important to be a critical thinker and make good decisions. That's the point. How easily influenced are you by everybody and everything we're all day bombarded by campaigns, by companies, and by politicians, and by religions. If you're in Utah, the Mormon influence is heavy, and there's nothing you can do about it unless you learn how to completely remove its influence. But I'm out of the church. I'm still heavily influenced by it because I have family members that are still in it. I have friends that are still in it. I have friends that are out and that are they have their own opinions. We all have our opinions. Whatever. And then my last thought, I guess, that's just coming to my mind is, remember Ram Dass last week, he says enlightenment is detachment. You detach yourself from everything in the world, and you become enlightened. And I guess at the same time, if you want to be removed from influence, you don't accept anything that anybody says or does. They might be trying to sell you a product so they can make some money, or they might be trying to help you. But in any case, when you remove influence, when you remove somebody's ability to coerce you to do or to buy something, then you can't be influenced. Maybe that's a dumb comparison, but again, influence isn't bad. It's only bad when we don't know what we're supporting or what we're endorsing, what we believe. If you don't know your values and somebody is trying to coerce you to believe something like the victims of Jonestown, they might not have been sociopath cult members. In fact, I think the point is most of them weren't. They were just vulnerable, unfamiliar people. They had just joined this church in California because maybe they had a family member that died and they wanted to find peace with God. So they found Mr. Jones and his gospel or whatever. And when he says, if you want to be with God, you need to follow me into the jungle, and we're going to build him a temple. So they go to the jungle. I mean, Joseph Smith did this. They left from the east and they came west because of persecution, and the followers, they weren't all dummies. They were just heavily influenced because of some circumstances that made them vulnerable. Whether the leaders are intentionally exploiting the vulnerability, the vulnerableness of the people, or whether the leaders actively believe it, doesn't matter, because it's up to you to be a critical thinker about what you're consuming, even when you're vulnerable, even when you're unfamiliar. You go join any institution, you attend any class that you're completely unfamiliar with. You might be unfamiliar with all these principles that I talk about, even still learning shit about yoga, learning a lot of the Stoics, learning financial information is still very very vague to me. I don't understand a lot of it. I'm very vulnerable, and I trust the words that come from the experts that I read, from the books that I read. But it's not up to me to take their words at face value. It's up to me to learn what they're saying and then apply it somehow, and then compare it to other information with controversial to find the other side of it, and then to decide what's good information, what's bad information, and how I can make the best decision. So have awareness. Be aware. Wake up. Look around at what you're consuming, what you're being influenced by. I'm influenced by Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson's energy drinks because hey, Dwayne, he's ripped, he's successful, and he likes this energy drink. I could trust him. I could trust his influence. I'll drink his energy drink when I want one, even though I never really care for energy drinks. We're all victims of it, but sometimes it's a positive experience, just like the running shoes example. Sometimes we make automatic decisions. I'm being so repetitive, but it's such a fascinating principle to me. Excuse me. We have to behave automatically a lot of the time to be efficient creatures, but we have to check ourselves every now and then to make sure our behaviors are consistently good. Okay, that's it. Thanks for listening to like an hour and 45 minutes of this. Influence by Robert Cialdini, PhD, The Psychology of Persuasion. It was fascinating. It's tough to listen to, and it's a thick book, 27 hours of audiobook. Lots of personal examples, lots of shared examples, lots and lots of studies, shared experiments, research conducted, and then I love to just go through this summary to make sure that I don't miss anything too. There's what would you call it, like concise summaries for all the chapters. So go read Influence if any of this conversation inspired you or intrigued you. Check out my podcast, not my podcast, my blog, CadenKellysBlog.wordpress.com. I'll give you links to my social. They're right here in the video if you're watching the video, but you can find them on my website. The book that I'm going to read next week, I'm committing to reading. This doesn't have an audiobook, unfortunately, but I'm going to commit to reading it. Ego is the Enemy, Ryan Holiday. It's he's the creator of the Daily Stoic. This is excellent philosophy. He's they call him one of the world's most influential thinkers these days, and we've read a lot of his books already, so I'm excited to read another one. Anyway, thanks for tuning in. We'll be here next week, as always, 8 a.m. Mountain Standard Time. Come join the conversation. If you have anything you want to share, you can message me at my socials to give me your thoughts on anything else. Otherwise, go do something challenging this week, and be conscious observer of the world around you. You'll see a lot of these styles of influence around you, just on the fucking billboards. It's crazy, but the way people talk to you, they want you to do things for them or just do things in general. So it's very fascinating. But next week, ego is the enemy. We'll see you next time. Have a good week, everybody.
したい